Good morning. Welcome to our adult class on a very cold morning in the Panhandle of Texas, but I appreciate everybody being here and getting out, able to get out. We didn't have much snow yesterday. Prayer request.
Continue to pray for the folks in California and all those victims of hurricane in southeast.
Certainly, and people all over the United States that is affected by this cold. We think we're cold, but in the northern states, they're talking wind chills of minus 20 and 30. So,
We'll take what we can.
we can appreciate the warmth that we've got, even though we don't necessarily use them.
Betty Crenshaw.
Who?
Betty
Betty
Crenshaw.
Crenshaw, certainly. Okay, let's pray.
Kind and gracious Father in heaven,
Hallowed is thy name. We thank thee, Father, for the blessings of the day, the blessings that this is the Lord's day, that thou hast permitted us and allowed us to assemble and given us strength and ability to be here. Help us to worship thee this day in spirit and in truth, and we hope that our worship unto thee is acceptable in thy sight. We pray, Father, we want to continue to remember Betty Crenshaw in our prayers, and also remember those that are suffering from tragic losses of many possessions and some even their lives in the fires and the hurricanes and other weather tragedies that have happened across this great country. Please help them to be restored to a reasonable place in life and allow them to have things better than they were formerly. We pray, Father, for all of our sick. We pray for those that are suffering from losing loved ones. We pray for those that are suffering from any cause, that as it is thy will, that thou will bless them and help them to get out of their troubles. We ask, Father, that thou would be with us through this class and help us to learn the things that thou wants us to know. Forgive us of our sins and allow our souls a home in heaven as it is thy will. In Jesus' name. Amen. We're picking up in Romans 12, and this whole chapter, written by Paul to the Romans, I tend to separate out thou shalt and thou shalt not. And this is a chapter of thou shalts, or we should. Sometimes I think we tend to center more on the things that we shouldn't be doing, and certainly that's proper. But we don't give as much consideration to the things that Paul says we should be doing, because we're human and we think that, well, I'm doing that. So we tend to parentheses those off and not delve too much into what Paul was dealing with the brethren in his various letters. And remember, this was a totally different time of existence than
to anything that we'll ever know or be involved with, for the most part. Different types of society, different problems, different groups. Not to say that we don't have problems of our own today, but we don't tend to delve too much into what Paul was dealing with at that point in time. And certainly, Roman brethren were under a strict ruler, very strict ruler, that did not really want to give Christianity its proper place. And dealing with customs and ways of life that came from all different sorts of classes, wealth, poverty, education-wise, upbringing, just a whole bunch. We have those same things today, but we don't tend to have to deal with them like Paul was having to deal with. He was having to train the new Christians in a much different, I won't say entirely different, but much different way of life, just because of switching over from those certain people that had been a Jew and been following the Jewish traditions or teachings. But here comes Christ. In many ways, a whole different way of life. And even though Christ is centered on a spiritual life, more so than the physical life still enters in. And I think we tend to forget that sometimes. But the instructions that Paul is giving does give to the different letters, the different people that he writes the letters to, is trying to get their physical lives pointed towards spiritual. Would you agree? And that's a hard job. So, I want to touch on, picking up in Romans 12, down about, let's start in verse 9. Let love be without hypocrisy. Abhor what is evil. Cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in brotherly love. Give preference to one another in honor. What is honor? I want to talk a few minutes about that. And there's probably as many people as are here in class today, there's probably that many definitions. So if every one of you gives something different, you're right. What's your idea of honor? What does honor mean to you?
It's a verb.
You can use it as a verb or a noun, correct?
Recognizing the worth of and placing value on them.
The worth and value of a person or situation, I guess, if you want to put it that way. I want to center more on the person of what it means to honor a person. We on? So, is it Christian-like to show more honor, respect to some than it is others? I told you last week I'm getting my toes stepped on. I'm still getting my toes stepped on. It does not differentiate. Yes. Yes. Now,
We give our brothers and sisters in Christ a little more honor than we do those of us.
do we?
I do, I think. Sorry.
No, and that's good. I don't know that I've gotten there yet. So,
Paul says we're working on it.
well, and I think that's the maturity that we have to have. That's the growth that we have to have as we live a daily life in Christ, and as we become more and more aware of all the things that we should be doing as we grow. And I try not to think that I've hit my peak, that I'm doing all that I need to do. But sometimes I do. And I know that's a true struggle for me, that I know that I haven't gotten there yet, but something needs to push me to keep on trying to get there. And I think as Christians, we lose that sometimes. We forget that. We know our direction, but I think there's some complacency sometimes as we go through our lives, and we're all busy. There's all stuff that conflicts and comes into play and causes us to take our eyes or our minds off of heaven and concentrate on what's right now, which is the world. And we shouldn't do that. Exactly. And you came in at the exact right moment, because that's the direction that I'm heading. Thank you. How do we honor somebody more than we honor ourselves?
There's a scripture somewhere, and I don't want y'all to be aware, don't make yourself more important than y'all.
Big part of it.
And I think in the context, memory ain't too good. Like at a feast or a meal or a banquet or something. Let somebody else sit down first. Let the more important people sit down first, or get their food first, or do whatever first, and then you sit down.
Yeah.
And just because I honor that person, don't mean I dishonor you.
No.
But that's something I always try to remember. Don't make yourself more important than you really are.
And do it consistently. And that's where for me, the hard part comes in. I'm reminded of an old Three Stooges gag of one of them wanting to go through a door and the other one saying, no, after you. And then the first one says, no, after you. And then the other one says, no, after you. and then they both try to go through the door at the same time and don't go through. But that's similar, I think, to what's being said. And one of the scholars that I was reading in studying for this lesson remarked how that we should be trying to outdo one another in honoring one another. And yeah, we should. And so many times I forget that. And just what point do you take it to that no, you go, no, you go, no, you go, nothing would ever get done. So how do you honor somebody more? And it comes at the specific moment for many, many different situations. And I think Paul's trying to tell the brethren that we should try to outdo one another in honoring others before we honor ourselves. But sometimes we just get the big head.
He's writing to the church
Correct.
in Romans.
He's writing to the
He's not
brethren.
writing to necessarily
The world.
the world. Yeah.
Nope.
So we need to keep that in mind as well as when we're honoring, I don't know, just
Well, and it goes back to your original statement or earlier statement that our brethren, our brothers and sisters, do deserve more honor. I fully agree with that. But yeah, and that's a must. But we also are to not mistreat people in the world.
the rest of the chapter down there talks about love your enemy.
Yeah.
Eat when he's hungry, give him drink when he's thirsty.
Exactly. And sometimes that's pretty hard to do.
That's what I'm trying to get at.
And can you have enemies in the church?
If you want to put honor to the test, try not honoring a judge or a police officer.
There you go.
Steve, if you take this chapter in context, and I know the title's on scripture, but it's called dedicated service, is what mine says. If you take verses 1 through 2, the context is that as believers we are to be transformed, and that transformation calls us to service.
Correct.
And that service is our spiritual act of worship. So that's verse 1 and 2. You're transformed to perform an act of worship, which is defined as service. Verses 3 through 8 says, but in that service you're all given different talents. And so you're going to be doing different things. Some are teachers, and some are, preachers, and some are whatever. But you're going to have different talents, just like the body has different parts. You're all part of this one body. Everybody's going to be doing different things. And so that could cause you to value some things more than others. But that's not how it's supposed to be. You're supposed to be transformed into service. And everyone who's doing the service that God's called them to do that's their ministry, that's their worship. And so we're to honor each of those equally. And then he comes back down to the verses you've been dealing with, verses 9 through 12. And he starts off and says, let love be without hypocrisy. Now what have we already heard? The world will know that you are Christians by the way you love one another. Does that ring a bell? So we're to love without hypocrisy. And then he goes on, and if you read verses 9 through 12, just think about what the church would be like if we did verses 9 through 12
then you're gonna be honoring each other for the work that they do. That in the sense that God has blessed them with a certain skill, a certain talent, a certain ministry. And by honoring each other, we show that we're transformed. We show that that's our spiritual act, and we become a light to the world, because that's how the world's going to know that we're different.
Very good. And by being that light, that example, hopefully we can encourage those in the world to do likewise. And these are all things that make for a good society as well, not just in the church, but in society in general, which goes back to on down in the chapter. We're not to not love anybody. In the church or not in the church. And I think sometimes we forget that. And then honor goes past than just acknowledging or loving somebody. Not mistreating somebody. Going that extra step. And back to the command, love others as you love yourself. And how many times do we forget that when we mistreat somebody? Oh, I can think of many times as a kid in school how that remark about how somebody looked or what somebody was wearing or what somebody did was or no hair was very disparaging. And as a kid, I could blame it on youth. But as an adult, I don't have anything to blame it on, except I'm not honoring somebody the way that I should. And back to the Christian being the example, just think how good the world would be if the world thought along those lines, or people in the world thought along those lines. That people were kind to your neighbor, were willing to help your neighbor, instead of trying to beat them down or outdo them or have more stuff than they've got, or any number of things. We know it's not going to happen because Satan wants his dig in, and he doesn't want everybody to be good and honorable and doing what they're supposed to do. Oh. One scholar made the comment that honoring one another is to place value on someone with your words and actions. Jesus did this. He showed honor to Matthew, a tax collector, who most people despised. He expressed honor to Nicodemus, even though at first he didn't understand Jesus. And he even showed honor toward Judas, even though Jesus knew that Judas was about to betray him. And he showed honor toward Pilate as he spoke with him prior to his crucifixion. I know that we respect judges. Jesus was doing that as he was about to be sentenced to death. I don't know that I would have been able to show as much honor as Jesus did. But that's an example of what we must do. It's not a matter of want to do it or trying. Paul didn't say, try to honor. Jesus didn't say, show honor to those that you want to and forget about the rest. We got a big job, folks, and the world will be a much better place as we do what we're supposed to do.
I
And
don't think the world will get any better. We're gonna have to bring them to Christ.
I agree. And going back to Rob's earlier comment about honoring our parents, the Bible teaches we're to honor each other, and God's Word mentions 4 different groups that we're to honor. Parents, Matthew 19:19 and Ephesians 6:2. Those in authority, Romans 13:7. Spiritual leaders, 1 Thessalonians 5:12. And we're supposed to honor our spouse, Hebrews 13:4 and 1 Peter 3:7. Any more comments on honor? Okay. Appreciate your comments that we've had on honor. Let's look at Romans 12:16. Be of the same mind toward one another. Do not be haughty in mind, but associate with the lowly. Do not be wise in your own estimation. In other words, don't get the big head. What are we talking about living in harmony? Does that mean only just getting along? Not killing one another, hurting one another, tolerating one another? How do we live in harmony? The Greek word, the phrase live in harmony comes from the Greek word phroneo, and I'll spell it Phroneo. So I have no idea if my pronouncing that is the way that it's supposed to be. But it means to think or to set one's mind on. So if we purpose to do something, if we set our mind in a direction, that helps us to get there better, and goes back to what Paul was telling in verse 1. Verse 2. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Paul's telling the Roman brethren that you're going to have a mind shift. You've got to start rethinking the way that you're going to be doing things going forward. Because now you need to have the mind of Christ, not the mind of self. Boy, that's hard for me.
Really, he's just continuing the thought that he started back at the very first chapter, and then really got to it in chapter 6, first part of chapter 6. It's a time to change your focus when we recognize that Christ is our authority.
Yes.
And these just all build off of that. You mentioned it earlier, I think, change our focus from physical to spiritual.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's what that was, die to your physical self and rise to walk a spiritual life and understanding with Christ.
And that takes me back to the parable of the sower, that as I read that parable, some people never make it. They're too caught up in the world, and the world's too ingrained in them, and they never make that transition. They love the world too much. But some people do. That's the good seed. Of course, it's God's desire that everybody make that transition. But we know that that's not going to happen. We have to do our part. We have to teach. We have to be the right example. And we have to do what's right our own selves before we can teach others or do better. Romans 12:16 suggests a mindset of unity and peace among believers. How good would that be if that were all the time? I know it's supposed to be, but in reality it's not. We have to do our parts, though, to make sure that we continue in unity. Harmony is not merely the absence of conflict, but an active pursuit of understanding and cooperation, and that goes back to honor. We should continuously try to outdo one another, to honor one another. And if we do that, then that love will prevail, that unity will come into play, that harmony will be a way of life instead of just every now and then. You know people that love to live in turmoil. They want a crisis going every day, every minute, and some, if they don't have that crisis, they'll create one. Sad to say that there are people like that. Shouldn't be. Do not be proud. What's proud or pride got to do with it?
Put your trust in yourself instead of in God in lots of cases, or even in your brother to some extent. I can't keep from thinking when I read this, don't be wise in your estimation, about Jesus saying, it wasn't an accident in the Beatitudes that the very first one
Moses wanted to run the other way.
You knew who to pick. They didn't either in the beginning, until he realized that God was, understood that it was God that was gonna do it through him.
Nor did Abraham.
Yeah.
All three of the great leaders that we know about from history.
Even Solomon wasn't wise in his own estimation.
Exactly.
He asked for wisdom.
Exactly. And certainly, wisdom is something that we all need to ask for, need to be aware of when God's trying to tell us something, or show us something, or teaching us. How many times have you thought to yourself, I don't need to know that. I'm already good enough at that. I'm already there.
I
We-
think there's two ways of honoring him. It's the worldly way and the spiritual way.
Correct?
And what the world honors people for is riches and position and things like that. And what
Fame.
he's trying to tell us is, spiritually, you have to honor everyone. Not saying you don't honor those people in high positions that need your honor, and like the world says, but you also honor your fellow Christians and even people that are just as good as even, it's like the verses about the two men that come into the service and they pull the one that's rich up to the front and make the one with the raggedy clothes sit at the back. You know, it's a whole different way to look at honor and respect.
Exactly. And that's exactly how I wanted to end up, that we can show honor in many different ways, but we shouldn't let appearance or wealth or prestige or anything that you can imagine misguide our honor of others. Thank you for your comments. Appreciate you